In Vastu, why is there more emphasis on squares than circles and spheres?
That's a very interesting and very intelligent question. And did you know that every 2 minutes, the energy reaching the Earth from the sun is equivalent to the whole annual usage of humanity? That means all the energy, all the cars, all factories, everything moving, all the lighting, all the air conditioning and everything what is used on Earth in 1 week, in 1 year is equivalent to 2 minutes of the sun. That means the sun is the greatest influence on Earth. And then the question is, which time is there interesting? And that is always when there is a change, when there is a gap. And that is the sunrise, because there the night changes into the day, yeah, and in the evening there is the sunset. And if you then connect these 2 points from the east to the west, you get one line, yeah, from east to west. And due to the spinning of the Earth around its own axis, you get the axis of the Earth, that's the north and the south pole. And then you have these cosmic laws of this latitude and longitude, which are covering the whole globe. And from history, always it was known that in contrast to the circle, which symbolizes the heaven, the square points to earthly existence of stability and static perfection. And that is what we want. The square brings on down to earth. And that is what the people want when they build a Vastu house. They want to have stability and success in life. I can explain one example. When I gave a lecture in South Africa, then immediately one person stood up and said, originally all these buildings from people living in the savanna or in the desert or forest, they built square houses like a tent, yeah, and then they could orient themselves. And then after some time, some Westerners came and they said, oh no, it's much easier to build round buildings, yeah. And then they started to build round buildings. And what happened? The children who grew up in these round buildings, when they went out to the jungle, they could not find back the way, yeah. So they could not orient themselves anymore. And that was earlier when they were living in a square building. When they went out, they educated in their brain this sense of orientation very well, and they could orient themselves also when they had been outside. So building a square building, yeah, or a rectangle building is educating what is already in the brain, and that is the sense of orientation, yeah. And in Vastu, all these 4 cardinal directions, they have a specific quality. And in a round building, you cannot orient, yeah. There is no quality, yeah. All the wherever you look, it's the same, yeah. It's not orientation. Maybe John, you want to add something to this point?
In order for the interventions that we build on the surface of the earth, the buildings we construct that we then occupy, to not be out of harmony with the actual environment, with the actual architecture and energy pattern on the surface of the earth, a reality known by physics, the walls that we construct ideally will be aligned with the cardinal directions. And at the simplest form, that means that a building would be a square. However, Maharishi Vastu buildings can be much more complex in shape, because you can combine many squares and rectangles in the footprint of a building.
Many Vastu homes are rectangles or L-shaped structures, not squares. Maharishi's own home is a long, narrow rectangle. Would you comment on this?
Yes, so in Vastu, we have a different task. For example, if you build in the middle of a village or town, yeah, and the plot is small, then it's maybe more appropriate to build a square Vastu with an atrium in the middle. But if you build somewhere on the countryside where you have more land, then it is also very auspicious that you build a longish building, more rectangle, with the long side facing east, and try to place the east facade as much as possible. Everybody who entered Maharishi's house and had the experience there, that is a long building with the long side facing east with a lot of windows towards the east. And if you then look out towards the east, you get such a great feeling because you are always facing the direction where the sunrise is. And we just discussed that the rays which are coming in the very early morning, just coming from this gap between night and day, they are so enlivening, they are so healthy. And in Ayurveda, it is even said, the first principle, if you have a disease, you should go out on sunrise and make there a walk and talk. And in a Vastu house, yeah, so you don't have to go out and walk all the time. Just that Vastu house is doing that for you. It catches all these auspicious, healthy qualities and brings it to the house, yeah. And some even say that this rays of the rising sun, yeah, this is nutrition which the sun sends to us. These are divine Wagens nutrition which come to us and enliven our physiology and heals our physiology. That is why it is so important to have this eastern quality. Yeah, I think this answers this question. When you have a long building, yeah, with a lot of glass and windows towards the east, that is highly enlivening and bringing one physiology and the personality to enlightenment. Yeah, so you have this option. In Vastu, you can have more square building, but it's also nice to have a longish building. Yeah, just depending on which land and plot you are building.
There was another part to the question, which was the participant was wondering whether there may be L-shaped Vastu structures, and the answer is yes, but only very, very limited circumstances. While Christian has just very vividly described the benefits of an Eastern orientation, there are also some benefits to a Northern orientation. And so therefore it is possible to design an L-shaped building in which the main facade is oriented to the east, but the secondary wing is oriented to the north.
Earth's magnetic field changes over the years. How does this affect Vastu?
So this magnetic field is not the main focus. The main point is that, you know, when there is a change in nature, yeah, then there is some transcendental value is coming to us, yeah. And the biggest change is in the morning from darkness to light, yeah, when the sunrise is. And that is a gap. And always when there is a gap, yeah, then then very auspicious, healthy, transcendental values are coming to us. That means if you are facing east and looking towards east and orientating the building, the long side of the building towards east, then you will catch all these auspicious, transcendental values which are coming from this direction, and that is independent from the magnetic field, yeah, because the Earth is spinning all the time towards the east. For example, when we are at the equator has a perimeter of 40,000 kilometers, and there we are turning once around in 24 hours. That means on the equator, we are moving with 1,600 kilometers per hour constantly towards the east. So there is this cosmic law of movement. It's a huge speech where we are facing every day and every night for over years. And for example, if you are sitting in a car in an aeroplane, you always want to look towards the direction of the movement. There are people, when they look to the side or backward in the train, they get a bad stomach. Yeah. So the magnetic field is not the point, but what is a cosmic principle. Yeah, we are looking much wider, much more cosmic. Yeah, in all these movements of the Earth and the Sun and the whole galaxies. There are so precisely rhythms, and you can calculate them so precisely. And if there would be only a little thing, a minor thing wrong in this huge mathematic complex, then the whole solar system would go wrong, yeah? And this precision, what is in the cosmic laws, we all bring into a Vastu house. That is why the people feel so happy. And so they feel this good fortune in a Vastu house, yeah? Immediately when they move in, they settle down, they see, I'm so full of bliss that even don't want to leave the Vastu house, yeah? Because these cosmic laws are built in every part of that house.
Are Vastu principles and their applications different or the same in the southern hemisphere of the world, for example, Australia?
This is a very smart question asked by someone who's thinking deeply. And the answer is that they are the same. The difference in the environment north of the equator and south is that the sun over the course of the year spends, depending on how far from the equator you are, portions of the year in the opposite side. In the northern hemisphere, in the summer, it's in the south, in the winter, in the winter, it's in the south, north, and in the summer, it's in the north, and the reverse in the southern hemisphere of the globe. We all know this. And so it's natural to ask whether this difference, north and south, has any effect upon the design of Maharshi Vastu buildings. However, the answer is no. And why is that? It's for a combination of 2 or 3 reasons. One is everywhere on the globe, the Earth rotates to the east. The sun rises in the east. And so the Eastern orientation is the orientation that connects us to natural law. And there is always the North Pole and South Pole. And the unfolding of qualities of natural law in a structure on the surface of planet Earth, which in turn give rise to the quality associations with different sectors of a house. The placement qualities in Vastu are true everywhere on Earth.
Must a Vastu house always be 2 stories?
No, of course, it can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories. Yeah. You know, nature finds many ways to express itself. Yeah. We are not limited in any design style, shape of the roof, or we just should follow the principle which were explained in the lecture, that it should be beautiful, that means symmetric, that there should be some orderliness, but we can always adjust to the local style. Yeah, John, is this correct?
Yes, exactly. Christian, you've designed some very beautiful single-story houses, even though in your lecture you showed only 2- and 3-story houses.
Good. There's another question. Would you explain the term axis of reflection and how it is seen in nature and architecture, and why is the Brahmastan considered to be an axis of reflection?
If you see anything which is symmetrical, there are different kinds of symmetry, but the most common kind, and the kind that we see in the human body, and the kind that we typically see in the facades of buildings, is called bilateral symmetry, which means that you can draw a line, usually a vertical line down the center of the structure, and what you see on the right side and what you see on the left side are mirrors of each other. So bi meaning 2, along a line or lateral. So that is bilateral symmetry. It's one of about 9 kinds of symmetries that exist. The second half of your question was, what is the relationship between the Brahmastan and this line of symmetry? Well, the Brahmastan, which Christian spoke about very lucidly in this presentation, is a point, and it is at the core, at the center of most and perhaps all of the orderly structures of nature. And the structure unfolds out of that point. And from a cosmic, from a Vedic perspective, we can understand that the point is the collapse of the infinite organizing intelligence that is unmanifest at the basis of nature. It collapses into a point, and then having collapsed, it can express itself, it can arise out into a structure with physical form. And therefore, the point at the center of a structure is the junction, is the connection between that structure and nature's organizing unmanifest intelligence, which maintains the relationship, keeping that structure a part of the coherence of nature. And when we look at a structure that has bilateral symmetry, then we know that the Brahmastan must occur along that line of symmetry.
Another question is, it's very interesting that columns are so appealing to the eye. It seems that almost any building with columns looks beautiful. Is it the regular rhythm of the spacing of columns that appeals to humans?
I think this the answer is already mentioned in the question. So what we can see in every high culture, whether it's in Egypt or Greece or Romania or the Maya, always when there had been a high developed sophisticated culture, then the eye text started with the rhythm of columns, yeah, with cornice profiles, with arches, with decorative ornaments, because that is most uplifting, yeah, to the physiology, it seems. And if you look, for example, to the very small items, yeah, like atoms, yeah, and like how these electrons circle around the atomic nucleus and build up the very orderly structure, you see also there this orderly rhythm of the same thing, yeah. If you go to the smallest, you see that. And also from the biggest of the biggest. It seems to be a law of nature, yeah? And if you repeat things, these things get much more strong, yeah? It's like a coherence, like we have in this 1% effect of the Transcendental Meditation group, yeah.
Many of the pictures showed ornate details. Is that necessary in Vastu?
It's not necessary. You can certainly design a modernist building, a streamlined building, and Christian, in fact, has designed many beautiful modernist buildings. If you invoke this element of ornament, it has effects upon you that Christian described. What you see, you become, and if you gaze upon refinement, it brings refinement to you. However, that is not essential. And indeed, there are modernist buildings which are highly refined and which are absolutely beautiful and which surely bring refinement to the countenance of the person who views them. There is no conflict here. You may have your modernist house. We're seeing some buildings on the screen now that Christian designed. If you're sharing your screen, it looks like you are. We're seeing some of his current work designed for
yes,
the...
that is what we are building now up at Meru at the moment. That is our main focus.
Really lovely, Christian.
Yeah, one of your masterpieces. Interestingly, a question that came in at the very end that we did not answer was, can one have an architect design modern? And the answer is certainly. And in fact, Christian is quite a master of modern design. He has designed many modern Vastu buildings. And eventually he fell in love again with classical architecture, and this is the language he's working in now, but it is certainly the case that one can design in really any style, because the principles of Vastu are deep, deep laws of nature, deeper than any style.